I think the biggest risk is that we would stand in front of Jesus and he would kind of look at this pile of potential and that it would cry out against us. Certainly if it had done negative things, but I think the missed opportunity, we just read Hebrews 11 as well. And it's so clear that if you want to please Jesus, you have to have faith. And he just biases towards these people that just dive in and try things.
All right, Logan, we're here for another episode of Plan to Prosper. Like we mentioned last week, we have some special guests with us today that I'm very excited to introduce. We have Wes Lyons and Vipperman from Eagle Venture Fund.
Yeah. As we talked about before, we kind of consistently talk about how we enjoy aligning Christian investors' investments with things that are working with their faith. Yeah, that's the heart behind having these two great guys on.
Thank you guys for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, great to be here.
Yeah, we're really excited about our conversation today. And I guess where we want to start is just for people that don't know, we just want to get to know you guys each a little bit. So Wes, why don't you kick us off? Tell us just a little bit about yourself, family, where you're coming from, and what you do.
Yeah, I grew up in DC, one of 7 kids, part of a missionary family there with the Navigators, and ended up going to the Naval Academy. And my dream was to go fly for the Navy and then become a JARS pilot. So I thought it'd be really cool to fly airplanes. And then I wanted to somehow integrate my faith. And I heard that you could fly for like missionary causes. So that was the game plan going in. For a while, I wanted to do the astronaut thing. Love watching those launches that happened. But when I chose at some point through my Navy career, when I chose going back to the Pentagon instead of a flying tour, I off-ramped from the astronaut path. And we kind of always joke about like how hard that was to be like, oh no, I got to give up that dream of being an astronaut. But yeah, grew up one of 7 kids, really a delightful family that got to be part of with plenty of challenges as well growing up.
Dude, I always thought Wes had a big vision, but I didn't realize it was to outer space. We've never had that conversation. That's awesome.
Yeah, the Artemis launch was so cool. Going back to the moon, it's a pretty cool thing that we're doing.
Yeah, it is. I love watching those.
Wes, are you married, have kids?
I am. I married a fellow Naval Academy grad, and we have 4 little boys. We joke that her whole career has been leading men because she led men in combat for a decade, and now we have 4 little men that are smaller and more demanding than she used to lead. So,
Vip, how about you? Where are you from? What was like growing up for you?
Yeah. I grew up in Richmond, Virginia. I always tell people I grew up with the quadfecta, so braces, glasses, acne, and chubby. It was a great combination to be a middle school boy and deal with all those things. But the Lord was very generous. Someone really spent some time investing in me and kind of helping me see that it wasn't what other people said about me or the way that I saw myself, but it was the way that, God saw me and his love for me that made so much of a difference. And so, coming to that realization really changed me, gave me a heart for vulnerable people and folks that were struggling in their lives. So ended up doing some youth ministry work in Virginia, where I grew up, and then moved to Louisiana with my family. My senior year of high school, went to LSU, got to, shout "Go Tigers" for a couple of years and see some fun football games. And then the Lord led me overseas to Taiwan and China. So we spent about 10 years doing work in Asia in the church planting space, which was just an incredible opportunity. A lot of challenges, but I got a chance to see like the underground church in China grow and some things over there. And then came back to the States in 2013. And because I spoke Chinese, literally my one and only skill set at the time, I got hired to work in the investment space to work with Asian investors into the U.S. markets. And so from doing that, started doing $1 million, $20 million, $300 million deals with overseas capital, and just got a chance to experience like the institutional investment markets and kind of see how the skill sets of talking to people in the church planting role were also very relevant to talking to people and having conversations in the business kind of investing environment. So over time, got a chance to start an event in Dallas called the Lyons Den. It's like a Shark Tank for Jesus. And so got a chance to see great companies pitch and meet guys like Wes, who came and joined the judges panel and kind of evaluated the companies, picked the winners for us one year. And so built a relationship with him, and just got a chance to see God do some amazing things. So joined the Faith Driven Investor team for a couple of years as they started that organization. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, Wes and the team at Eagle said, "Hey, Vip, there might be an opportunity for you over here in the venture capital world." And man, my heart just jumped. So it's been so exciting to be a part of just the opportunity to build and support entrepreneurs, as well as to shepherd the hearts of investors and collaborate with them, and just see these funds grow and make an impact in the world.
Vip, I want to briefly ask this question because listeners, I'm curious, maybe our listeners will be too. Your name is fascinating to me, that your name is Vipperman. Can you explain a little bit? Is your name actually, did your parents name you Vip with the last name Vipperman, or is that part of a nickname?
It's a nickname. Yeah, it's officially Donald Ray Vipperman Jr. So nice and long. So somewhere around the end of high school, early college years, Vipperman is just something hard to shout at somebody, especially by a sports coach or something like that. So everybody started calling me Vip. And, it just kind of stuck. So there's literally not a person alive on earth that really calls me anything but Vip anymore. When I met my wife, I was already Vip. And so it's been it. We've joked about officially changing it, but that's never happened. So at least not yet anyway.
Okay. I love it. It's got this unique character to it. I'm a little jealous, to be honest.
You got rid of the original name. At the same time, you got rid of the quadfecta.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, we actually joke, if you look back at my story and like the way the Lord worked in it, right around the time when I was really starting to come into my relationship with the Lord and kind of live for him and do more of his work in the world, that's about the time when people started calling me this instead of, Donnie is what people used to call me when I was a little kid. So it is pretty neat in that, like, looking at the Old Testament and maybe even the New Testament, like people were, name change, like Abram to Abraham, or, Saul to Paul.
Saul to Paul. Yeah.
So I just thank the Lord for, giving me a good name to go with. So it's been funny. Yeah. I've only gotten like a VIP bag at an event one time, but that one time it was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Well, Wes, I want to ask you a question. Logan and I both have, I would call it a moderate fear of flying. And so I want to just ask a little bit about your time as a pilot, what that was like for you. What did that teach you about discipline, processes, and everything that's led you to where you are now and help prepare you for what you do now with Eagle Venture?
Yeah, I think two stories come to mind that really are emblematic of the couple things that I learned. One is just the power of, we would call it PPRs, or pre-planned responses, workflows, or what people call it in the professional world. But a lot of people have become very aware of the Strait of Hormuz and Iranian air defense. But about 10 years ago, I was patrolling the Strait of Hormuz, and the Iranian air defense actually locked me up and told me they were going to shoot me out of the sky. And in the crazy thing about that is that it was not a big deal, because I'd been told this is exactly what they do, and I'd been told exactly how to respond. I don't think it was even a big enough deal that I mentioned it. Like, I put it in the write-up for professional purposes, but it was barely worth mentioning, if that makes sense. And they were I had all the data to show that I was actually locked up. This was a very real situation. And years later, kind of realized oh, that was kind of a big deal. And obviously when you see F-15s getting shot out of the sky by somewhat similar systems, it feels very real to know I've been in that situation. But the power of a pre-planned response and deciding in advance how you're going to respond in high pressure situations that's what aviation is kind of known for: checklists. And when your engine catches on fire, what do? You just run through a checklist. When somebody says they're going to shoot you down, you just run through a checklist. And the power of that turns it into kind of just a walk in the park. It takes a little bit, there's a little bit of emotion in it, but imagine if I was trying to decide in the moment, oh no, I'm locked up by Iran and they just said they're going to shoot me down. What do? Let me try to come up with a solution. It's wildly different to have a pre-planned response for high-risk situations. The second story that really has formed a lot of what we do at Eagle, as I've kind of realized how much it formed me, is I got a chance to command the U.S. detachment to the Philippines when ISIS had taken over. It's a mostly Catholic nation, but then the southern island of Mindanao is a deeply poor and deeply Muslim, a perfect place where ISIS has a heyday. And ISIS had taken over a city called Marawi there. And I was the officer in charge of a detachment the U.S. Navy sent to help the Filipino military take that city back from ISIS. And I think we're 10 or 20 missions in, and we kind of broke through the clouds and was getting my tasking for the day. And you can get a picture, just an absolutely bombed out city beneath you with like small arms fire and going both ways. And you really you wish it was more complex than this, but you're identifying good guys and bad guys based on the direction they're shooting, because it's just all out war beneath us. And the tasking I got for the day was ISIS will be using children to lure the Filipino military out of their positions and as a trap. Go find these kids before it's too late. And spent the entire day trying to find these kids and never found them. And I didn't have a grid for people being that evil. At first I was like, why are they using their own children? Like, this is how little I understood of it. Like, obviously they're not using their own son. And it's somebody that they've lured into that situation or captured. But I just didn't have a grid for it. And there was something that happened in the processing of that day and that experience that really did help me I think I had a subtle theology that the world is a pretty good place. And there's really almost a theology that evil people aren't really evil, if that makes sense, or that there isn't a deep evil in the world. And that has helped us shape, is like so much of what we do is building systems to try to combat truly evil enterprises, truly evil systems like organized crime and human trafficking. And that was one of those days where it kind of pierced the veil and became part of my view of the world, that there really is deep evil in the world.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think, we all watch movies and we, fall in love with the idea of good versus evil and just pretty black and white. And I think you're right. I think a lot of us probably struggle with the reality that the world is not always as crystal clear. At least it seems that way when you're just living in America in your day-to-day life, that sure, somebody might do something like cut you off in traffic that seems bad, but they're just going home to see their family, or maybe they, it's not like a movie. But the fact is, the world is full of really, really dark evil that needs to be combated with the power of the gospel, but with what's God kind of entrusted to us to steward. And I think that's what's so cool about what Eagle Venture does, and we'll get into that in a little bit, to see how you guys are doing just that with this fund. So it's really cool.
Yeah. So from there, how did you guys? Vip, you talked about kind of faith-driven entrepreneur and things like that, but how did kind of both of you guys decide we really want to apply our faith to our vocation?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. Coming back from living overseas, I had the opportunity to join a Bible study of older, more experienced gentlemen in Dallas, just some phenomenal guys who just were walking with the Lord in their 50s and 60s. And over time as well, like in serving overseas, there'd been some volunteers that would come out and, spend some time with us, do some, mission type work that we would kind of help facilitate. So I got to see guys that had a heart for serving the Lord and were, kind of taking their business knowledge and experience on mission. They would teach business classes in China and then seek to share the gospel with folks. Or in the group in the US, there are these business guys. They were kind of looking at their life, and you could tell many of them had some experience in their past that they'd really struggled with. and some things that they regretted, that they had, like, in their time in building these great businesses and making, significant amounts of money. And one of the things I realized is I don't want to wait till I'm 60 and I'm successful to make an impact for the kingdom. I believe that we can start this, in the 20s, in the 30s. We don't have to wait till then when I've got more money or I've got more experience or, I've got more free time, as it were, but that I can actually live it out in the business day to day. And I think guys like Mike Shiro and the work of Steve 12 are speaking, Henry Kastner and the work of Faith Driven, Ed Pierce and the work of the Lyons Den. There's just a lot of great folks out there kind of giving that message of you don't have to wait until then, you can start living it out now. And that's been one of the things that's been really encouraging. And then seeing companies like the ones that Eagle invests in and the ones that pitch at Praxis events or pitch at Lyons Den events or, the ones that the angel networks are starting to invest in, they're starting to see more and more companies where the kingdom impact is built into the company as it's created. We call it at Eagle direct impact, where the thing that the company actually makes money doing is the impact they want to have on the world. And so, now that we know that it's possible, it's phenomenal to see it at work. So Wes probably has a couple better examples.
Yeah, I think it's been a whole journey, and mostly we've gotten influenced by people showing us what was possible. I think getting into relationship with people and seeing things that I didn't really, that I hoped would be true, but I didn't believe could be true. When I was first started as a financial advisor, I dove into like, how do I express my faith? It's like 2015. I tried to use Evaluator and actually human trafficking was the issue. I just come off the battlefield and I'm like, hey, what does Evaluator have to say about human trafficking? And I dug in and they were divesting of Southeast Asia. Essentially was their response. And I was so angry at the inelegant way that they were dealing with the forced labor issue that I threw out the entirety of faith-driven investing. I was like, if that's how you deal with forced labor, I'm out. Like it made me sick to think that divesting of Asia was how you would get rid of this issue. But then I read an article in Christianity Today about Eventide, and started digging in and seeing that they were performing in the public markets, doing redemptive things. We had been hired to build a private equity fund and had done, I think, 7 out of 10 entrepreneurs that we'd backed were faith-driven. And the ones that were really solving big issues, like Liveful was in that original fund. They're now $100 million company solving malaria and really, really deeply redemptive problems. Seeing that some of our highest performing entrepreneurs were solving some of the big social issues, it started sparking this conversation that maybe I didn't have to. I think my picture was that I was the JV team, that the people in finance just had to make money so that the varsity folks could actually go play the game, which was like, I love finance and I was getting into it. But I was like, I wish I could be on varsity, like playing JV just felt like it, just to fuel the real work, felt disappointing. And so it was kind of these flashes of like, wait a second, maybe finance could be varsity. And then it's been pulling that string ever since.
Yeah. How did the two of you meet?
It was through the Lyons Den. We were the predecessor Eagle to Fund to Eagle. We were deploying into entrepreneurs of all, just with that mandate of making money, but of doing a bunch of impact investing as well. And Vip invited me down to be a judge at the 2017 Lyons Den, which is where we connected with Wade, who co-founded Eagle alongside Rafi and Ray out of Switzerland with me.
And so when was Eagle officially founded?
2017. It was actually in the months following the 2017 Lyons Den is when it was actually founded. So.
Yeah, and a pretty cool part of that is when the Lyons Den started, it was a Shark Tank for Jesus. You got to have your 5 guys or gals on the panel. We were like, okay, who are we going to find in the world who's actually doing this? And so we started like asking people like, it's one thing to say like these people invest money, because there's lots and lots of people who invest money, but to say like who's investing money, making an impact, who's actually funding like these companies that are trying to transform the world for good. And so scouring the country, talking to people, asking for referrals to a friend or a friend who's doing something. And we got to Wes. And it just, at the time, this is 12 years ago now, it's amazing. Like, it was so hard to find people who are actually actively thinking this way. And praise the Lord that, 12 years later, there's so many more people and hundreds of folks involved, if not thousands at places like Kingdom Advisors, that are really, trying to get in, you're doing this work actively now, but still so much opportunity for more.
So the cool and kind of different thing, well, and you got into this a little bit with kind of Lyons then, but the cool and different thing with Eagle is you're getting into companies very early. A lot of people think kind of traditional private equity, like, oh, dig into the finances, all that kind of stuff. But Eagle's different. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I think from day one, we were seeing that it was possible to invest in these entrepreneurs who were growing quickly and making a big impact. And for years, we really struggled with the language of how to explain. We knew the portfolio was performing and we knew it was having an impact. But everybody has this preconceived notion that we kept running into, that those are incompatible. And so we've really developed this language that Vip was mentioning around. It is possible to, most companies have experienced inverse tension between, or inverse relationship between, if they try to do more good, that it's lower profit. But they're thinking of basically philanthropic models. Like Tom's company, for instance, is a buy one, give one model. And they absolutely have an inverse relationship between the more they give away, which is the more impact, the lower profit that they have. And a lot of people still think in that philanthropic mindset, that same one that I mentioned of like, oh, the only way to make an impact is go make money so that the varsity can go do it. Most people are still have legacy, at least shadows of that idea. And so we've developed this language around, we call it direct impact. Sometimes we call it native impact. It's that getting paid to do the thing you want to see in the world. If you're paid to place refugees into jobs, your revenue is directly correlated to how many refugees got jobs. If you're paid to train somebody to identify a human trafficking victim, get paid more and more human trafficking victims are identified. It doesn't guarantee success, but it does put a very direct relationship between more revenue and the more revenue, more impact, more impact, more revenue. Those run in lockstep. And so it addresses, people often will ask the question, like, what about the tension between profit and impact? If you're able to build portfolios of companies that really are born and bred and paid to do the thing you're looking for, then you do eliminate the tension. Like you're able to say, well, the question just kind of doesn't compute. If Ashley Chapman's training doctors and nurses to identify human trafficking, well, how many doctors and nurses would you like trained? Like it's just, they run in lockstep with one another. So that's really been part of our journey of trying to understand what we knew what was happening in the portfolio and explain it to others, because there are these deep preconceived notions. I picture it, the preconceived notion is largely that you have philanthropy on one end and almost a linear scale up to on the other end, guys, the wolves of Wall Street that are just barely staying out of prison, but they're the ones who really make the money. It's kind of a linear scale, if that makes sense. And we're saying, well, that linear scale is a false narrative, that like well off that line are these companies that are really changing the world and making impact. And it's really, it challenges deep preconceived notions about the sacred secular divide, the nonprofit for-profit divide, that we often are leaning into really challenging people to think differently about.
Well, and an encouraging side of it too is if you can invest in those companies, then when they exit, you don't have to worry about them losing their impact because the impact is baked into the revenue model. And so when they exit to private equity or they, that type of situation, which is often the case in like a software technology company, the company that's buying them is buying the impact too. And they can't really strip it away if they want the company to be successful.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We had a guest on a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about just career navigation stuff as Christians. And one of the questions, or one of the topics we discussed was Christian ambition and the idea of Christians really should be the most ambitious people on the planet when we have the Great Commission as our fuel, the Holy Spirit empowering us, and the call to work as if we're working unto the Lord in whatever our hands are finding themselves doing. We should be the very best at what we do, or at least should be striving to be the very best at what we do. And the natural result of doing such would be earning money for that, essentially. Like if you're really good at your job because you're working as if you're working for the Lord, it makes sense that the Lord would bless that. And so I think what you guys are speaking to in the ventures that you're funding are everything is honoring the Lord. And so it is only natural that the Lord would bless that. And because it's good work, that there's compensation for it as well. So we think that's really cool. I'm curious. Yeah, go ahead.
I love Andy Crouch wrote a book called Strong and Weak, where he builds out, the whole book is around basically this quad slide idea where on one axis you have authority, and another axis you have vulnerability. And so picture like bottom left corner, low authority, low vulnerability. It's a baby that's well taken care of. And then up in the top left would be tons of authority with very low vulnerability. This is what Wall Street wants. Max return, very, very low risk. That's what we're challenged to design for. Bottom right of this would be very high vulnerability, very low authority, just somebody who's being human trafficked, for instance. Top right is somebody with a very high authority and very low high authority, high and vulnerability. So think of like if you've seen an Olympic skier go down a mountain. Extraordinary authority and extraordinary vulnerability, or Biles when she's doing backflips on the balance beam. When people step into very high authority and very high vulnerability, we stand and we cheer. If they do that on behalf of somebody else, we literally just standing ovation. Like we'll watch it on TV if we see the skier. If they're doing it on behalf of a child that was stuck in the snow, we would come to tears because it was so beautiful. It is the definition of human flourishing. And the best example of that is Jesus Christ on the cross. Never has more authority and more vulnerability been exhibited in a single individual, in a single act. Redefining great investing from the top left corner of that graph, which is exceptional authority with as little vulnerability as possible, to exceptional, the intersection of very, very high capacity with incredible skill on behalf of other people is, we believe, the new definition of what human flourishing is with this excess capacity we have as people who steward capital. So that visual of, and it's the entire line is human flourishing. It doesn't, when you watch a toddler take his first steps, he's climbing with all the authority that they newly have. We literally stand up and shout, because that is a person in human flourishing. They are taking a risk to do something new and difficult. And we literally stand up and shout. So all the way climbing up that graph is the essence in this framework of human flourishing. And it's a redefining of what human flourishing means as we look at risk, vulnerability, and the on behalf of others is really important. So the Bible talks a lot against selfish ambition. For ourselves. But what you're describing is ambition on behalf of other people. So the skier who's just doing it for their own glory, it's like, yeah, we might watch it. But if you're doing it on behalf of somebody else, we literally stand and shout, because we can sense the glory of God is in the picture of this person who's in absolute flourishing. So I think there's a whole conversation here about what it means to flourish as asset allocators. And it has something to do with this graph and the book Strong and Weak by Andy Crouch.
Yeah.
Do you find in your diligence process that you either identify what you think is a company in the top right with the high vulnerability that then ends up being in the top left, or vice versa, you find a company that you think, this is probably just top left, but towards the end of your diligence, you realize, oh, this is actually a good top right company?
I mean, we're looking at 500 deals a month and only really spending on time on those that have exceptional potential to live in the top right corner, where they're solving a major issue. The question is usually, can they do that at incredible scale? So there's lots of people who can serve one by one or have an idea that that would change the world if it went to scale. The question is, can you get there? If that makes sense. And often that question has to do with whether you should be a for-profit or a nonprofit. We've helped 5 nonprofits spin out a for-profit or convert to a for-profit. But then we've had others that we really concluded like, hey, what you're doing is gorgeous, and it can be scalable. There's just no way to make money off of it. You need to live in a nonprofit skin. So absolutely. But if you don't have direct impact, we're not going to put you in the 1% where we pour, like we spend 90% of our time on the top 5 deals every month, vast majority we're throwing out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
What are 2 or 3 non-negotiables when you're looking at a deal?
I mean, direct impact has to be very, very high. What we're optimizing, we have learned a lot of lessons over 55 companies and a decade of doing this. And we've found that there's a lot of pattern recognition where serial founders who have been in these positions, people who have led before, tend to be more successful. People who have sold to this marketplace and have a lot of relationships with the customer base tend to be more successful, and who have been thinking about a problem for a very long time. Like the worst thing you could say in an Eagle diligence call is, I had this brilliant idea the other day. Like we could literally just shut down the call then, because we want you to say, we literally have founders. We're like, yep, at 11, I started working on this problem and I'm in my mid 40s. I've been trying to figure out how to solve this my entire life. And I've finally cracked the code on a way to do it in a brilliantly scalable way. And hopefully they have a lot of relationship with their customers, have leadership experience. It's a very different profile from Silicon Valley is looking for the 22-year-old with a crazy idea that might go to $1 billion. We're looking for the 40-year-old who's been working on a problem, knows every customer because they helped them solve 5 other problems. They've worked in this space for a very long time, and they're just finally hitting the moment where it's ready to scale.
So yeah, it's kind of a 2-part question. The first part is, not every company that Eagle Venture has ever invested in has financially performed perfectly or great, correct?
Oh, 100%. Yes. We have losers in there.
Right. So second part of the question is, how would you reply to a Christian who feels like it's not stewarding God's money well to potentially lose money?
There's 2 elements to it. One is the beauty of early stage venture capital is that if you go into 20 different early stage names, the ones that run really, really hard. So they might go 20, 50, 100x. And if you have 2 that are side by side and one goes from 1 to 0 and the next goes from 1 to 10, it works out very, very well. And the power law, which is where the few that run hard take over the financial performance of the whole portfolio, is inescapable in early stage venture capital. Because if anything runs 1,000x, it dwarfs what happened across the portfolio. So what I love about early stage venture capital from a risk mitigation perspective is that it has nothing to do with interest rates. I remember being so offended in the middle of the 2008 crisis when I logged in and everything was red. I was like, I was told that when the one side goes down, the other side will go up. What happened? Why is every single thing moving in the same direction? I felt like I'd been lied to. And it's very hard to find things that don't have anything to do with what the Fed chair says. And there are cycles in venture capital. They're just different. And there are risks in venture capital, but they're different. So especially in early stage venture, our primary risk kind of company by company is whether that company can go from their idea where they're selling $10,000 a month to where they're selling $10 million a month. That has to do with a bunch of risks that have nothing to do with the Fed. So building a portfolio of risks that have nothing to do with each other is the essence of great portfolio construction. So I'm taking a long time to say non-correlated high total return assets are very, very good investing. That's actually why we got into venture capital in the first place, was pursuing non-correlated total returns. The other thing I would say is capital, where people, I think, mess up in impact investing is when they mismatch the type of capital with the job to be done. So if you take impact investing and kind of wrap it in an equity wrapper, but then end up doing loans to companies that are actually quite high risk, you end up with a mismatching. You might have concessionary returns, if that makes sense. And I would submit, what is venture capital very, very good at? It is good at creating categories, creating industries, and changing really, really big problems. And what we're asking capital to do, like with the Eagle Freedom Fund, we are literally sizing, creating, and forming the industry of counter trafficking. Like we're taking what cybersecurity did for the crime of hackers and people using skills online to commit crimes. It created a $350 billion industry to stop a crime. And there's other countercrime industries. We are very explicitly creating an industry. And it is important. And that's what venture capital is good at, if that makes sense. And so we take 25 bets and some of them run like crazy and help form an industry. And that creating industries has the potential to be extremely profitable. So it's a two-part answer. The one is non-correlated total returns are the essence of great portfolio construction. The other is match your capital's job to be done and structure perfectly. So there's three pieces of that. You also need a financial advisor. So if you match the job to be done to the structure, check, you're on track. You also have to match the structure of venture capital to the pool of capital with the right time horizon, which is why we tend to work with financial advisors. You want a pool of capital that doesn't need access to that capital for 15 years or something. Maybe this 10-year fund takes 12 or 14 years to totally play out. If you match the job to be done with the right structure, with the right pool of capital, now you got all three makeups of a potential for everybody in the value chain to have a wonderful experience. Potential, obviously, the compliance team never wants to guarantee anything, but those are key elements to potential success.
Vip, we talk a lot on the podcast about the parable of the talents. So along the same lines about taking risk, I think a lot of Christians intuitively think that being a good steward means no risk. We're just going to protect everything. But the parable of the talents would argue otherwise. And so why do you believe that good stewardship actually requires taking some kind of calculated risk?
Yeah, good question. I mean, just regarding the parable of talents, one of my favorite descriptions I ever heard about that is the difference between like a bank security and an investment professional. Like if you've got a dollar or whatever, $100, and a person's a security guard, their job is to protect that money. They're not trying to grow that money. They're not trying to make that money bigger. They're just trying to protect that money. So they would bury it in the ground and keep you from losing it. But if your job is an investment professional, your job is to multiply that money, right? And so if you bury it in the ground, it's a completely different conversation. You're not doing the job that you were asked to do. And so I think a lot of times when we look at those passages, we kind of think, hey, we've been given gifts. We've been given roles and responsibilities, and that could be from parenthood to, marriage relationship to the job that you do. And based on that, I think it makes a lot of difference how you handle what you've been given. But at the end of the day, our goal at Eagle and our, passion in this work is, investors trust us with their dollars. Our goal and our job is to multiply that money the best we can. And we do that by working hard, filtering through to find the best entrepreneurs in the world doing this work, making bets on those entrepreneurs by investing in them, and then spending 10 or 12 years, sometimes walking with those entrepreneurs, helping them get better. And that could be, personal conversations when they're going through challenging times in life. It could be, Eagle provides a optional spiritual coach for every entrepreneur that it works with us. so that they can not only get business coaching, but they can get spiritual coaching if they want to, from a partner of ours that does church planning coaching as a career, like as a living. So that's a really cool thing. We even do Eagle University. So once a quarter, we bring in great experts in the space to talk to the entrepreneurs and to give them good content to help them get better. So whether it's a last minute email, like 5 minutes before they go into the meeting with Zuckerberg's team or something like that, because, I think Wes has got one of those calls before, or like a life crisis and how you're dealing with, our job in managing the talents that we've been given and the work that we've been given is to help these entrepreneurs succeed and then to return the capital back to the investor with an expected return, which in our case, we always seek a 3 to 5x multiple on the 10-year fund. So we're looking at an average of a 20% IRR over that 10-year time.
Without breaking any NDAs or anything, could you tell us about a company that you've invested in that perfectly embodies what you guys are trying to do at Eagle?
I think one of the examples that come to mind is that we alluded to earlier. Ashley Chapman leads a company called Altus, and one of the most acute needs in the counter trafficking industry is to be able to identify victims. So like we have faces and phone numbers on 14,500 individuals that were placed sex for sale in Dallas Fort Worth in the past 12 months. But figuring out who they are and finding them is a huge part of the pipeline to being able to identify them, offer them services, and eventually see them flourishing 1, 3, and 5 years later. Ashley has identified that one of the biggest opportunities to be able to identify human trafficking victims is through hospitals. The doctors and nurses will, on average, interact with the human trafficking victim 15 to 18 times before they're identified. And there's a lot of just general awareness training in the marketplace today. She's identified that if you go from general awareness, like, did you know human trafficking exists, to workflow-based training of here's what to do at the front desk, and here are the workflows that apply to you. Here's what to do in the blood drawing station. Here's what to do as a doctor, to actually get workflows for exactly what you're looking for. And then moving from with that skill from 1-800 trafficking, let me just generally send a piece of information out, to actually having a relationship with, I know Cindy from the training. I think I'm seeing something. Let me call her. That combination of workflows and relationship has up to 100x increase in identifications. And we hear breathtaking stories of how after these trainings, when we have a recording from a story where 2 days after a training, a little girl came in. She exhibited all of these characteristics of someone who was being trafficked. She said, yes, I would like help, and led the police back to, there were 11 other little girls who were being trafficked as well. Just breathtakingly impactful, but then also very, very good business. Continuing education market is $64 billion this year. And half of the certifications in the marketplace have added human trafficking as a requirement to keep the continuing education, like the hospital systems and all those designations. If you roughly kind of napkin math that down to 32 billion, and then say maybe 1 in 20 hours in a given year might be human trafficking training, you're looking at a $1 to $2 billion total addressable market. And Ashley is absolutely one of the leaders in pursuing that $1 to $2 billion per year revenue opportunity. So very, very good business with profound impact every time they train a doctor and nurse. And there's a bunch of doctors and nurses teams out there that have gone from 2 to 3 identifications per year to 200 to 300. And this is the beauty of for-profit. It doesn't mean more chicken dinners. It means we've got 5,000 hospitals in pipeline looking for this training from continuing education budgets, and hoping to take down meaningful chunks of that this year.
It's amazing.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I think one of the good things that you guys are doing or helping with is kind of the trend that we're seeing is people have a desire, I think more of a desire to know what they're investing in instead of just, S&P 500. And it's cool that people can realize, I invest in things like this.
The joy of this is off the clock. And I think we don't talk enough about kind of pursuing joy in investing and pursuing beauty in the midst of the world can be pretty tough. Like we see all these, like what is going to happen with AI? Like we talk about AI so much in the investing world. There are deeply beautiful expressions of how AI is being used to rescue, literally find missing children, to literally map the criminal networks. Like it is going to become very difficult to run organized crime in the United States, because what is AI really good at? Putting together a bunch of patterns and creating pictures out of it. We are so experiencing the breathtaking effect of AI on fighting a crime, and just the joy of pursuing beauty when most people want to kind of, there's a lot of, justifiably, there's a lot of things to be concerned about how AI could be used poorly, but there's so much beauty as well. Let's run after that and invest in that. You get the world that you invest in, or you get the world that you build. And we have a chance to really shape that as we create this industry.
We're running a little low on time here, but just want to reiterate our appreciation for you guys hopping on today, and apologies for the technical difficulties that have made the conversation a little unique. But I have a question for Vip. Logan and I are both Philadelphia Eagles fans, and for a brief period of time in 2015, there was a quarterback on our roster, and he is now one of your partners at Eagle Venture. What does Tim Tebow bring to the table that with his passions and his skill set that's really helped you guys?
Yeah, well, to start with, our overall bench press average went up significantly when he joined the team. But so much more than that. I think one of the biggest things that we talk about is like Tim, when he speaks, can just encourage a person to run through a wall. He truly is one of those kind of folks that we were talking about earlier, where he's committed so much of his life and his experience and his talent to this, that people stand up and give him a standing ovation before he starts talking when he speaks at events. And that blows me away, like, honestly. So I think truly his commitment and his like just pure intentions have been really phenomenal in this space. And then, because of their recognition, their knowledge, people coming to them, knowing them in this space, we get some deal flow, I think, opportunities come in through the Tebow group where people will bring them opportunities. Also, there's opportunities in speaking in events and those kind of places where, like at Kingdom Advisors for the last couple of years, I think Tim Tebow has spoken once a year ago. Once he'll be speaking again next year. And he's going to talk about some of the exciting things that he's doing with Eagle Freedom Fund and the work that they're doing fighting human trafficking, some of his favorite companies in the portfolio, that type of thing. So Solving the World's Greatest Problems has also done a series of recordings and brought in like Tim on a bunch of those. So it's just been an encouragement to work alongside somebody who's got knowledge and experience in the space and just a huge passion for it. And is honestly seen by a significant amount of Americans, especially, but across the world. Is this a person people look up to?
Yeah, that's awesome. I did, when he was on the Eagles, I did call him to the radio show and say he should remain on the Eagles, and the guy ripped me a new one. But other than that, yeah, it was good.
I agree with you.
It was a good run for him. I was all about it.
Oh yeah. I'll have kind of one final question as we wrap up, unless you have anything else, Logan.
No, go for it.
Our podcast is called Plan to Prosper. And so I'll ask this to each of you guys. I'd like for both of you to answer. What does it mean to you personally and biblically to prosper?
Good. Okay. I would say, that's a great question. Processing through it, our whole life, we're just trying to continue to grow, grow in our depth of relationship with the Lord. Grow in our ability to prosper in our relationship with our family, grow in, honestly, the older I get too, like getting closer and closer to 50 over the next few years, grow in my depth of relationship with like friends and the people at church. And then obviously to grow, financially, so that we're kind of prepared for what the future has. But in all those things, there's both a commitment to grow each day with a trust that the Lord has tomorrow in his hands. So, we put time and effort in relationships. We put time and effort in our work with him. We put time and effort in doing our job well. But it's, we do the work for today and trust that he's got tomorrow. And so continuing to walk with him over a lifetime and just trying to remain faithful in that, I would feel like I had prospered.
what comes to mind for me is Henry Kastner, a couple of Christian economic forums ago, reframed the idea of risk as risk that would stand in front of Jesus and not get a well done, good and faithful servant. I was just reading to my boys, James 5, kind of personifies the rich as having a pile of gold that is crying out against them. And I think the biggest risk is that we would stand in front of Jesus and he would kind of look at this pile of potential and that it would cry out against us. Certainly if it had done negative things, but I think the missed opportunity, we just read Hebrews 11 as well. And it's so clear that if you want to please Jesus, you have to have faith. And he just biases towards these people that just dive in and try things. I don't see any cases where he's like, oh, kid, you dove in and you gave it all you had and you bet everything on trying to follow me. And I really, really just did not like that. So I think the bigger risk is that we would stand in front of him and we would have influence or capital or relationship, some form of ability to have tried. And he'd be like, wow, it's crying out against you. And so that's how I would define prospering.
Thank you. Well, this has been a really great conversation. Where can people go to find more about Eagle Venture and what you guys are doing there?
EagleVentureFund.com is the place to find it all. We have quite a bit happening on LinkedIn as well. So.
Okay.
And Vip, you're doing a podcast too, right?
Yeah. If you want to hear some of the stories of the companies in the podcast, it's called Backing the Bold. So it's been so fun to interview the companies that we get to invest in and let them share a little bit more about their vision, their hope, their story, just like you guys are asking us questions today. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Our pleasure. It's been great.
Yeah. Thank you guys again. And thanks for listening. We hope you tune in again. God bless.
God bless.
Investment advisory services offered through Stonecrop Wealth Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. This material is intended for informational purposes only.